Yeah, go now.
Good to go. Dzień dobry. Good morning. Welcome to this webinar presentation on the American Hardwood Advantage. My name is Neil Summers and I am the American Hardwood Export Council Technical Consultant. Usually this is presented to the audience, but now in these strange times we're talking through Zoom. So if you want to ask any questions either in English or in Polish, then please write any questions that you have in the chat window and we'll answer them at the end of the presentation. So thanks again for listening in. American Hardwood Export Council, or AHEC, is a non-profit trade association which was set up in the mid-1980s. It doesn't have any direct commercial role, it doesn't buy wood, it doesn't sell wood, but what it does do is promote the timber species that are in the American hardwood temperate forest, promoting what nature provides. And hopefully by doing that, we provide inspiration for architects, specifiers, designers, and educate people on a global scale, because this is a global association. It's based in Washington, DC, and it's part funded by USDA, Department of Agriculture funds, and also by funds from our American hardwood sawmillers who export all over the world. I'm based in the European office in London, but we have an office in Mexico for Latin America, an office in Hong Kong that looks after the huge market that is China and Southeast Asia. And then we have a guy residing at the moment in Dubai, who looks after Oceania, Australia, India, Middle East, and Africa. So it's a global association with global reach. Three key messages to promote underused species. There is a total of about 22 commercial species that are available growing in the temperate hardwood forest, some more volume than others, and others that are underutilized. Low carbon credentials, it is good to build in timber, and the benefits and advantages of building in timber, and looking at new applications through recent technology. Here we see a map of the United States, and the main thing to point out is that the main growing region for the temperate hardwood forest is on the eastern seaboard, all the way from the top of Maine, all the way down through the Appalachians, Pennsylvania, Virginia, the Carolinas, into the top part of Alabama and Georgia. It also points out all the different colors that you see. The main colors that we need to look at are the green, the blue, the pink, and the purple. And that demonstrates that most of the forests, as we'll see, 80 to 90%, is in private land ownership attached to farms of smaller parcels of land of about 20 hectares. The orange, which you see, that is more state federal owned forest, which is mainly in Michigan and up here in Wisconsin, and also some in Pennsylvania. So main forest grows on the eastern seaboard down through the Appalachians up to the Midwest, and the majority of the timber and trees are in private ownership. It's a big resource that we have available, and in geographical terms, it's the total area of France, Spain, Netherlands, and Belgium put together. This demonstrates that through information forest inventory analysis from the 33 main hardwood producing states, confirms that the majority of timber, either from the forest ownership, which is in 80%, and the sawn timber by harvest is in private ownership, which can have issues with coming down to certification. We can show and demonstrate that all of the forests and the timber provided from this forest is a sustainably managed resource. Pretty much all of the timber is by natural regeneration. And what we mean by that is that when a private landowner wants to harvest once or twice in a generation, he will send a forester into his land and he will make a quote on all of the mature timber, mature trees within that parcel of land, and then these will be offered for sale and taken out, allowing the space and freedom for the small saplings, new generation, to grow into that space. There is very little what we'd call similar to coniferous plantation that you might be familiar with in Europe, certainly here in the UK, where all trees are planted at the same time and tend to be all harvested at the same time, around about 45, 50 years. We can also demonstrate there is more growth than is harvested, and we can also show that all of this is performed by a sustainable forest management policy. That wasn't the case many years ago. First settlers came in and there was a voracious appetite for timber, for construction, for building and for railroads, and pretty much everything got chopped down. Some states such as Pennsylvania were reduced to round about 8% forestry cover, but that has now recovered back to around about 80%. So this is before and this is after. The same forests today stretch for miles all over that land area that I described area. And nothing really like this as a reforestation from a hardwood perspective has ever happened before on the planet. It really is a huge success story. So demonstrating sustainability, we can look at forestry risk assessment, a recently republished Seneca Creek study, which has been peer reviewed and found to be a very robust document, proving that American hardwoods has a very, very low risk of entering the illegal supply timber chain. Forest inventory analysis, data mapping of trees with life cycle assessment, we can produce what's called an AHEC, an American Hardwood Environmental Profile. Sounds complicated, but it's a consignment-based reporting document which measures the environmental impact across 8 key life cycle impacts. And all of our American hardwood sawmillers can issue these with each consignment of timber that is sent across the world. It's a very comprehensive document and meets the requirements of the European Union timber regulations and importers' due diligence. In front of you now, you will have an interactive forest map, which is on the website, the American Hardwood website, www.americanhardwood.org. It jumps around a little bit, I'm afraid, but what it does demonstrate is when you see the map of the United States, it shows the whole of the forest volume of all of the timber species within the states of the United States of America, which you see here. And the density, the higher the green, then the more timber and trees there are in that particular state. Then it goes on to show, in this particular instance, it shows American red oak, which you will hear quite a bit about in this presentation. And it shows the growth of American red oak here, and also the removals of American red oak. And then you can tap down into individual states. Here we have American red oak in North Carolina. And in almost all instances, this growth bar that you see here, which will come round again in a second, almost in all cases, for all timber species in all states, outweighs the removals. So you have a net growth bar in the positive. So have a look at that on the website. It's a great tool. And we also have the life cycle assessment tool, which we can demonstrate how long it takes to not necessarily grow a cubic meter of timber, but how long it takes for that timber to replenish in the forest as the growth rate of each tree grows. And you can show that it takes just over, it takes 0.57 seconds for a cubic meter of American white oak to grow, to be replenished, and 0.8 seconds of American white oak, 0.57 seconds of American red oak. Both these tools and life cycle analysis on the website. Nature is the inspiration for all ornamentation. Wood is universally beautiful to man. It is the most humanly intimate of all materials, so said Frank Lloyd Wright. Just want to look at some species diversity and then some species in a little bit more detail. As I said earlier, there are some 22 commercially available species, some in more volume than others. And you will see from the bigger circles, so we have American red oak up here in the top left and American white oak down here in the bottom right. So between those two, the total is 33%. So a third of all of the trees that grow in the American temperate hardwood forest are oak of one sort or another, slightly favoured by red oak. Other species which we need to promote, which are not used as much as we really should be using them, American cherry at 3%, we have hard maple at 7%, tulip wood, very versatile species, 7%, hickory and ash 5%, and then we have American walnut, probably the most prized and valuable of the American timber species, is only at 1%. So American hickory, cherry, hard maple, red oak and tulip wood, white oak and American walnut. Just want to quickly explain a little bit about grading. We work in conjunction with the NHLA, which is the National Hardwood Lumber Association, and they have a rule book which determines the mathematical calculation of the amount of clear wood on a piece of timber on a board that is cut from a tree. Sounds complicated, but it's not necessarily so. What it does demonstrate is the importance of getting the whole of the yield from the tree that is cut, and not just the best boards. So it's measured on a percentage basis of clear timber between defects, such as a knot, or as I like to call them, a characteristic and a feature. So the lower the grade, the prime boards being the clearer boards, the lower the grade or the more rustic look that you want to go for, then it's more economically priced. But as I said, it's important to find a market for all of these boards, not just the prime boards. Onto some species now. American cherry, Wisnia. The net volume is increasing by 7.4 million cubic meters each year. It's prized for its rich red heartwood, as opposed to the creamy sapwood band on the outside. It's medium density, and like all fruit wood, it works machines extremely well. So the heartwood is red and tends to darken with age. Certainly in the UK, we used to make a lot of kitchen cabinetry out of cherry. And this case study from Caroline Place in London by Amin Tahar demonstrates this wonderful cherry furniture and kitchen cabinetry in this development. It's also prized for auditoriums and halls. This is the recently renovated Royal Academy of Music in London by Ian Ritchie architects, who used cherry throughout the auditorium. Looks absolutely beautiful. Or for more simplistic applications, such as a stool for the kitchen, designed by Felix de Pass with the architect Alison Brooks, which was featured as part of the wish list project. Again, details of which are on the website. Another underutilized species is hickory or pecan, often grouped together, very similar. It's the hardest of all American hardwood species, very hard wearing, very suitable for industrial or domestic flooring, and again the net volume is increasing, in this instance by 7.6 million cubic meters each year. Traditionally used for tool handles and sporting goods, and you can get all sorts of different features from mineral streaks which make it even more attractive. For instance, for this domestic floor, where also you get the contrast between the heartwood and the sapwood, giving this rustic appeal. Another underutilized species is American hard maple. Tends to grow more up in the northern regions of the United States, along the border with Canada, and in this instance this timber is prized for its creamy white sapwood rather than the heartwood, and you can see the difference in the amount of sapwood compared to the heartwood, say for cherry, which we saw earlier on. So it's a cold climate species. It's quite dense, very close growth rings because of the limited growing season, 3 to 4 months up in the more cold northern climate. And it's also where, as the name suggests, Acer saccharum, where the maple syrup is tapped. You can also get features such as curly maple and fiddleback maple, which again lends it another perspective. Again, you can use it for all sorts of applications. For furniture, this towers table by the Polish designer and maker Swallowtail Furniture, and also for fit outs. This is a case study from Hunter's Root Cafe chain in Melbourne in Australia, and they decided to use and specify the creamy white of the hard maple for all of the cabinetry and furniture within this cafe. Probably the most valuable timber species is American walnut. As we saw earlier, it's only 1% of the hardwood forest, tends to be quite a small tree. Here we have a prime log, which will probably go for veneer, and it's very prized for high quality furniture, cabinets and interior fitting. It is also increasing by 3 million cubic meters each year. Straight grained, very dark, beautiful heartwood with a creamy band on the outside of the sapwood, which, if the tree is felled and peeled quickly, then and steamed in a steam chamber, then the extractives from the heartwood can colour the sapwood the same colour. Examples is this OVO furniture range by Benchmark in the UK in conjunction with Foster & Partners, and again also for auditoriums and concert halls. And this is the recently refurbished Limbury Theatre at the Royal Opera House in London, which has recently been renovated, refurbished by the architects Stanton Williams. Let's want to look at a species now called tulip wood. We call it tulip wood. We try and promote it as tulip wood. In America, they tend to call it yellow poplar, which we try to differentiate because poplar in Europe tends to be quite a small tree and is only tends to be used for pallets making, sometimes plywood. But yellow poplar tulip wood is a much bigger tree. It's probably the fastest growing tree in the temperate hardwood forest if allowed to grow it will become the tallest tree. And in optimum growing conditions in the Carolinas, you can get a very mature tree for felling in around about 40-45 years, similar to the rate of growth of a conifer tree in Europe. Used to be in Europe until the last ice age, where it was eliminated. It does have extraordinary strength to weight ratio and strength properties, which we will investigate further in its useful structural applications. In Britain, it's very much used for architraves, skirtings, fixtures, that kind of thing, which tend to be painted. It's a very good paint grade timber, takes paint and stains extremely well. The structure behaves more like a softwood than a hardwood. Here we see an example of a theatre, the Nijmegen Theatre in the Netherlands, by the architect Frits van Dongen, who used it to all its glory, showcasing the versatility and highlighting the difference between the creamy colour sapwood and the olive green heartwood, which again, like cherry, tends to darken with age. Can also make tables and laminate it. Again, part of the wish list project we did a few years ago. This for the architect Alex de Rijker. I want to now concentrate a little bit on the species American red oak, which, as we saw earlier, is the most plentiful, the most abundant tree in the American hardwood forest. And the volume is increasing by 21.3 million cubic meters each year. The name red actually refers to the leaf of the tree, which goes a very, very deep red in the fall, before the leaves fall off. The timber can have a pinkish hue, pinkish color, depending on where it grows. It grows all the way down the Appalachian chain from the northern to the southern. The further south you go, the more the pinkish tinge becomes. This is the northern species, Quercus rubra, the southern species being Quercus falcata. So they're slightly different, but all grouped together under the same family. It's a unique, it's porous wood, it's more porous than white oak, and it does take stains extremely well. And it gets, I wouldn't say a bad press, but it's certainly underutilized in Europe, where we tend to favor white oak and also European oak. It is used a lot for furniture manufacture in China, Vietnam, but we'd like to see more of it used in Europe. It's very good for making tables. This light table by Matteo Thun, and a very nice example in building work is the Bloomberg headquarters in London, which was opened a couple of years ago, won the Sterling Prize for Architecture by Foster & Partners. And as you enter the building, you come into this amazing timber vortex, and all this is in American red oak veneered acoustic panels. It really is quite a superb structure. Not only that, for the paneling, all of the flooring throughout the building again is all in American red oak, and it was chosen for its color, for its warm sort of pinkish tinge, its pinkish hue, which gave the flooring a warmth to the building. In the United States, it is the staple flooring timber, and it does perform very well on the hardness scale, just behind ash, slightly ahead of European oak, and yes, just behind hard maple. So, as I said, it's underutilized in Europe, and last year we wanted to establish the performance of American red oak and try and dispel and counter preconceptions that this species might have had from what people refer to it as, and to just show just how versatile and beautiful this timber can be. So we challenged a joinery manufacturer, a designer's benchmark just west of London, to test northern, southern red oak and compare and contrast the results with European and American white oak. Compare notes from all the craftsmen who used it throughout the week to give a totally unbiased view of the performance in a whole range of different craft applications that you would need to make a piece of furniture. And in almost all instances, it performed as well, if not better, in some cases. So some of those criteria we looked at were jointing with mortise and tenon joints, bridle joints, hand planing, where it hand planed like butter, wood turning on a lathe, also looked at CNCing, and also steam bending, where it performed extremely well. And we found some really quite surprising and astonishing results, how we could twist it and bend it. We also looked at staining and finishing, and again, because of its porosity, it does take stains extremely well. So taking that forward, we did, AHEC did a project in conjunction with Benchmark called Legacy, which was a project for the London Design Festival last year in 2019, in collaboration with Sir John Sorrell and 9 other leaders of London's top cultural institutions to collaborate with joiners, designer makers, to make a piece that would be a legacy for their particular institution.
It's about bringing together a commissioner and a designer to create something wonderful. What we've done is go to 10 creative and cultural leaders from London institutions and ask them if they would choose something they'd like to have, which would be a legacy, through the use of this wonderful red oak. It's a great material, but the main feature of it, of course, is its sustainability. And I think what the designers are doing with it is fantastic. It's all part of the London Design Festival, so all the finished things will be exhibited in the Victorian Art Museum, and they will be part of an enormous idea, which is to show people how combinations of good clients and great designers can produce extraordinary things.
I hope you were able to hear that description from Sir John Sorrell, talking about the project and how it came into being. A few of those designs in a bit more detail. There was the duo sofa chairs by Terence Woodgate for Alex Beard at the Royal Opera House. Then there was Owl by designer Tomoka Azumi for Kwame Kwai Amar, the director of the Young Vic Theatre, themed on a boat, American red oak, painted in yacht varnish for use outside during the summer months and then brought in during the winter. The serpentine post boxes by Studio Mama for Hans Ulrich Obrist at the Serpentine Gallery. And then Fugu, a table and 2 chairs designed by Jasper Morrison Studio for Tristram Hunt, the director of the V&A Museum. Musical shelf designed by Martino Gampa for Tamara Rojo at the English National Ballet for all her vinyl collection. And then we have the Valet by Max Lamb for Maria Bolshaw at the Tate Museum. And this explores the use of dye, the creativity and examples of the porosity of the American red oak, that you can stain it to highlight the difference between the early wood and the late wood. Wooden hinge, a simple but elegant book stand by Raw Edges for Iwona Blazik at the Whitechapel Gallery. And a writer's collection, a table and chairs which started off as a little pencil case and then developed further into a more elaborate scene by the maker designer Sebastian Cox for Amanda Neville at the British Film Institute. Quite extraordinary take on a beehive called Behave by the French designer maker Marlene Hissoud for Ian Blatchford at the Science Museum. And then finally we have The Nest, designed for Sir John Sorrell himself by Juliette Quintero for the London Design Festival, which will go in his garden as an outlook seating bench for a period of reflection. And this was made in thermally modified red oak to allow it to be used outside, more of which we'll talk about in a minute. So all of these pieces demonstrating the sustainability of American red oak as a material and how plentiful it is in the US hardwood forest, and generated an extraordinary amount of viewing through key messages. So all of those pieces are described in this wonderful publication, the book about the Legacy Project, describing how it came into fruition, how the pieces were designed, and how they were made. And all of this is available. It's a free publication. It really is a beautiful book. You can order it through the American Hardwood website, www.americanhardwood.org. So please feel free to take advantage and we can get you a copy sent. Also been looking at other designs, challenging the Polish designer Tomek Rigalik for a natural born project, which was opened in Warsaw last year, I think, where quite a straightforward, simple design of a chair can show the elegance of the material and again how it can be transformed by utilizing of color. We're also doing a project at the moment in combination that is being mentored by Tomek for students from the design facility at Warsaw and Poznan. Another extraordinary project utilizing the porosity of American red oak, the open pore structure, was the Blushing Bar by Chan & Ayres at Sebastian Cox's workshop in southeast London, where we pressure injected by compressed air calligraphy ink into the open ends of the wood to create this extraordinary blushing bar, which was exhibited at Milan Design Festival last year. Rubric collection, also by Sebastian Cox, table and chair bench arrangement, where the bench is, the seat back folds down and slides under the bench. We've also done some student collaborations with some furniture colleges here in the UK, one at Rycote Wood in Oxford and Building Crafts College in Stratford, where the student gets to have a couple of boards of timber, again in this instance highlighting the use of red oak, to design a cabinet or a table to get used to the working properties. And some of the results have been quite astounding and have been award-winning in our Wood Awards. A dovetail collection by John Lewis. Sustainability is very high on their list of criteria and needs, and we've been talking to John Lewis for a number of years about using sustainable hardwoods from the American hardwood forest, and last year they produced a range called Dovetail, designed by Mark Furniture, using American red oak. So, if you had to invent a machine which gives you a renewable supply of building materials while also reducing carbon levels, it would be a tree. So says Andrew Waugh from Waugh Thistleton Architects, who only design in timber. So the American temperate hardwood forest, as we've seen from some of the species which I've described, has a wonderful array of different timber species, offering the designer architect quite a choice in grains and colours. One thing it does not have is, due to the temperate growing region of the trees, it doesn't have a timber species that you would call durable or very durable. The most durable would be American white oak, but it's not really suitable for exterior use for any length of time compared to a tropical hardwood, say such as Iroko, Ipe, Masaranduba, that kind of timber species. But by wood modification, either chemical modification through Accoya or Kebony, and by more generic thermal wood modification, you can turn non-durable timbers into durable timbers which are capable of a longer service life for exterior use. Thermal modification is essentially a high temperature kiln schedule done in an inert atmosphere, either in a vacuum or in the presence of steam. And you can turn these 5 American hardwoods, red oak, ash, tulip wood, yellow birch, and soft maple, from a non-durable species into a durable timber that is capable of being outside for a long service life. Here you see the wonderful grain of thermally modified ash in the background. These 5 species were used together back in 2011 with the Infinity Bench designed by Martino Gamper, who we saw earlier in the Legacy project, for the London Design Festival, to make this beautiful outdoor seating bench. So these species, the 5 species that we saw earlier, would not have been able to be used for this purpose previous to the modification. Other examples are this ash bench in Dubai, a Stanley footbridge in the harsh climate of the Mediterranean, down in Izmir, again all in US ash. And this is a slide which I like to show. It shows tulip wood in its normal state with the creamy sapwood and the olive green heartwood, and in its modified state where it turns it dark. And it gives a good talking point into how the timber can be the same species, and it gets into a discussion point about how you can use tulip wood in its natural state and then how you can use it in its modified state. This was used to great effect by architect Asif Khan for a Room on a Hill project in London, which is in ash and mainly tulip wood. Unlike most demonstration projects by AHEC, which are temporary, this is a permanent project. It's 25 by 50 mil thermally modified tulip wood slats in a galvanized steel frame, put together to make this quite simple but elegant outdoor play and learning environment. It's 20 meters long, 2.4 meters high by 1.8 meters long, on an ash deck with ash supporting joists. And we monitor this for its weathering every 6 months, and is still performing extremely well and is standing up to the rigors that 6 to 10-year-olds can throw at it. Then we come to Maggie's Centre in Oldham, which is all clad in thermally modified tulip wood by the architect's DRMM, Alex de Rijker, who designed this fluted corrugated profile to go on all of the exterior. The face is 100mm between each face, between each board, with a 2mm gap, which has stood up to the test and rigors of the harsh Manchester climate where it rains. So the dimensional stability has been incredible, and it hasn't moved at all. It's still maintained that 2mm gap. Tulip wood, again, for this small development outside Paris. EMBT Architects, the Collider Centre in Barcelona. Again, thermally modified tulip wood. And then this new project, which has only recently come to light, which again is in Melbourne in Australia. This was put up 2 years ago, recently photographed. It's painted in black. Anything painted in black is can be quite a severe strain on the wood as it absorbs all of the heat and the intensity. But after 2 years, all of this thermally modified tulip wood cladding again is performing extremely well. Just want to talk briefly at the end now about construction, building in timber. Carbon capture is very important. With the advent of new predictable structural timber building materials such as cross-laminated timber, CLT, laminated veneer lumber or LVL, glulam, timber is now being used more and more for constructional purposes for buildings. And there's strong evidence now that it suggests that these buildings made from timber have a positive effect on health and well-being, greater concentration in school pupils, decreased heart rate and therefore lower stress levels, and less use of toxic or harmful materials. Want to focus now on cross-laminated timber. Essentially is the domain of softwood timber, manufacturers utilizing softwood timber at source in Austria, southern Germany, Switzerland to make CLT panels. We think there is a niche market for tulip wood, again, low grade tulip wood, the versatility of it. It's the most economic timber species, and we first demonstrated the potential for use for CLT at End of Stair for London Design Festival in 2013, again by Alex de Rijker at DRMM. This was then taken forward to the Smile in 2016 in the courtyard of Chelsea Arts College in London, designed by Alison Brooks Architects. Some of the biggest cross-laminated timber panels made by Zublin in southern Germany. 3 side panels, 3 floor panels, 3 roof panels. Sorry, 6 side panels, 3 on each side. So 12 panels held together by self-tapping screws and also stainless steel plates, which you can see on the inside, to form this amazing cantilever structure capable of taking 60 people on each end. Structurally engineered by structural engineers Arup, who quoted that it could not be made in softwood because of the strength capabilities of tulip wood. Then again, we go back to Maggie's. So not only was the outside clad in thermally modified tulip wood, but it was the first commercial building to have tulip wood CLT as a structural element of the design of the building. And the architects, DRMM, wanted the beauty and the aesthetics of tulip wood to show, to outshine, so without any boarding up, but just to highlight the timber as the natural internal element. And if ever any of you in Manchester, Oldham, we can arrange a visit to go and see it. They're quite proud of the building and like to show it off. So that's the first structural building made in tulip wood CLT. We have a number of niche, smaller CLT manufacturers now interested in trying tulip wood for manufacture. The most recent show of tulip wood for structural was Multiply by Wall Thistleton Architects, who now only develop and build in timber, design in timber, for London Design Festival in 2018, where it was shown in this format in the Sackler Courtyard at the V&A Museum in London. So we made 108 2.7 square metre panels up in Scotland at Construction Scotland Innovation Centre. Here up on the top left, some 3-ply, some 5-ply, depending on the structural capability needed. And then they were cut down to 2.6 metres square with this castellated jointing effect with bolts, which was fabricated at Stage 1 in York. All of the offcuts, outtakes to put the panels together, all made the structural stair elements of the piece. To demonstrate its versatility, 6 boxes were put together for London Architectural Festival in 2018 at Store Street outside Building Centre. We also made here at the front some thermally modified tulip wood tables and benches, again highlighting the versatility of the species. It then went to Milan in this configuration for Milan Design Week in 2019. And then this year, just before the pandemic and lockdown hit, we managed to get it to Madrid Design Festival in February, again in this other configuration. Just want to finish by this other structure that we were involved with 2 or 3 years ago, which highlights American white oak, this time for manufacture of glulam. These are some of the biggest glulam beams made from oak in Europe, 24 meters long, the 12-meter cantilever out from the stanchion here, 1 meter deep at its deepest point by 300 millimeters wide, and the biggest one weighs 4 tons. 11 of them designed by Stadia designers, Populous Architects, again in conjunction with Arup, to produce this wonderful Stadia designed roof. I hope that's given you all a flavour to demonstrate American hardwoods, how sustainable they are, some of the different species and uses that we can put them to in design, both for furniture and also for structural. It is an expanding resource, and we can show and demonstrate that every 2 minutes the US hardwood forest grows by the size of a football field. Please get in touch, europe@americanhardwood.org, for any inquiries. I'll endeavour to answer any of your questions now from the chat line, but please get in touch, or you can email me direct, which is neil@americanhardwood.org, and please feel free to take advantage of the free legacy book. So thank you again all for listening to my presentation. Thank you.
Dzień dobry Państwu. Jeszcze w imieniu prezydenta tylko powiem, że na pytania postaramy się właśnie w tej chwili odpowiedzieć. Neil, could you go to your chat window now and see the questions, because people have been typing in as you went along.
Right, okay. How do I get onto the chat window?
Yeah, go back to that. There you go, on the right-hand side.
Here we go. There seems to be conflict between low carbon footprint and transporting American wood to Europe? That's a good question. It's by the economies of scale, basically. The general term that I would use is that transporting a container from the eastern seaboard, certainly to Europe, is the same carbon footprint as putting a container on the back of a truck and driving it 300 to 350 miles, something of that order. And all of these global carbon footprint implications are taken account in the AHEC, which I demonstrated earlier. So I hopefully answers that one. What is the current state of planned UK ban to use timber for structure that architects to try to stop, e.g. ACAN? Yes, unlike most, well, any other country where they are promoting the use of timber in construction and buildings, and are allowing buildings to be built bigger and taller, in the UK we are trying to restrict the use of building in timber, in cross-laminated timber, to 11 meters. We've been lobbying the government, all architects, anybody involved in timber, put their feelings forward by last Monday, where it was closed, and we're hopefully going to demonstrate the case for timber to be allowed for use for taller buildings. This was all in the wake of that terrible Grenfell fire in the concrete tower, of which timber played no contribution to that disastrous fire. So that is the current state of play. It's up to the government now to listen and hopefully see sense.
Okay, scroll up.
Up. Oh yeah, here we go, all the way to the top. How can you type comments, questions for Neil Summers? That's okay.
Just below. There was a question regarding oiling. Which is the best timber species for oiling? Just a bit below.
For oiling, all timbers take oil particularly well. Again, red oak in the testing that we did was found to be extremely good. It gives it a very good finish, particularly with coloured oils. Yeah, as we saw with Max Lamb's Valet in the Legacy project. I think that was an osmose oil with blue, so it does work very well.
Another question concerns what is the kind of wood, which is the best kind of wood if we want to do an outside terrace?
An outside terrace?
Yes.
For American hardwoods, you need to modify it. So again, one of the species which I described, either red oak, ash, not tulip wood for a terrace because it's quite soft, tulip wood for facades and cladding. So yes, ash or red oak. There are a couple of thermal modification plants in Poland. If you need to contact me, I can put you onto them, who have used American hardwoods in the past. Certainly tulip wood for facades. Any other questions? Oh yeah, which oiling, which is the wood if we want to do outside terrace? How should we clean wooden furniture if we wanted to keep it for a long time? What kind of chemicals should be used? I wouldn't need to use chemicals. Try to avoid chemicals for cleaning. Just to dilute soapy water, not too wet. And a wire brush from time to time to remove any algae that might grow on it. Any other questions? That's the low carbon one. That's the building one. More information about hardwood in Polish and English you can find on, americanhardwood.org. Are there any other questions there, Jacek, which I need to answer?
No, not in the chat window, no. So thank you.
Okay. Yes, if we're still live, please direct questions to Questia, our wonderful PR people in Poland. And as I said, you can also contact me direct if you wish, Neil at americanhardwood.org. So thank you once again for listening. Okay.